Terraria is an amazing game with many beautiful bosses, biomes and builds. Mods help expand upon this, with the Calamity Mod being Terraria's biggest content mod, also adding many more bosses, biomes and builds, bringing the total number of bosses up to 45 between modded Calamity and vanilla Terraria, including bosses considered to be some of the toughest in modded Terraria. But what if we didn't want to fight all those bosses to get to the real meat and bones of the playthrough, the end game? What if I fought this as my first boss, and this as my 9th? So join me as together we beat Terraria's Calamity Mod in only 11 bosses. Oh, and we never enter hard mode. So first, after I created my character and entered the world, I changed the difficulty to Revengeance, which adds rage and adrenaline meters at the top of my screen. When filled and used, they provide damage boosts to the player, with adrenaline being much more powerful. Revengeance also adds new AI and attacks to many of the enemies and bosses in Terraria. After pulling the average Terrarian experience of mining underground, I make sure to collect any explosives and active stone blocks that I can, so they can be shimmered into wire later on. Wire is required for summoning the Mechs, and since we don't beat Skeletron and don't have access to the mechanic, wire is very hard to get. Speaking of not defeating Skeletron, which bosses are we going to defeat? Well, actually none in pre-hard mode. Yep, not even the Wall of Flesh. The first boss will be the Destroyer, but I'll explain that more later. The general structure of this playthrough goes: gear up, find the Rockscalibur, defeat Destroyer, Calamitas Clone, Ravager, Lunatic Cultist, Moonlord, Profane Guardians, Providence, Devourer of Gods, Yaren, Mechs, and Supreme Calamitas. Yeah, not much downtime between bosses, and since we never enter hard mode, many accessories, items, and even biomes and enemies are inaccessible for our use. Now, I did not discover this, and I do not want to be credited for creating it, but more for sharing it. This one has already been completed before, and a wiki page on the official Calamity Mod wiki has been written about it. So, thank you to Silverheart, the first person who documented their run, and Rover, who basically crafted the entire wiki page himself. Anyway, back to the run. After I free the angler from a trasher and immediately shove him down the throat of another to gain its glorious golden fishing pole, I then escape a rogue Eye of Cthulhu, and this facial feature is the most annoying piece of shit in the entire game. I find the shimmer and set up a pylon there, and then I start fishing. Catching the bumblebee tunas in the depths of the beehive allows me to claim many fishing quests in one, and exponentially grow the number of lines I cast. Now, this is incredibly lazy of me, but you don't want to see me gear up for 17 millennia. You want to see me break Calamity progression. After the travelling merchant comes and sells me many items, including a DPS meter, which, with a mod I have, allows me to duplicate wire from it, which I did not know at the time. However, I buy a ludicrous amount of them, and allowing me to shimmer them into all the wire I would need, and not requiring me to scour the world for them anymore. While flying around, I locate some sky islands and obtain the usual gear from them. I also bully a Pinky to death for its horseshoe and demolish its house and land. Next, I descend into Hell for Hellstone, but I didn't beat any of the evil bosses to obtain a Deathbringer or Nightmare pickaxe, nor have I got Aerialite for other mining. However, thanks to Calamity, the Reaver Shark gets buffed to be able to re-mine Hellstone, such is why, when I was fishing, I fished one up. Then, so I didn't have to use an incredibly slow shark to mine, I mined some Hellstone first and then upgraded my drill to a Hellstone one, so I get really fast mining speed and the Hellstone strength. I also made some armor with the Hellstone I have gathered. Then, after realizing I need a good weapon, I head to the Brimstone Crag and obtain a Blade Crest Oath Sword, a very nice weapon, and also set up a pylon in the biome. Now for some cheese. See, technically the dungeon is off limits due to the mass production of insta-killing skulls that fly for my face. However, this isn't the only time in the playthrough that I'm going to have to encounter these giant speeding spells. So I just decided to slide right on into the dungeon and pull out a shadow key, tally counter, and bewitching and alchemy table for my use. And after many a deaths, I have everything that I need from the dungeon. The shadow key allows me to open shadow chests in hell for their loot, which is going to be extremely useless for me, except for the meteorite bars, which I will explain later. I also locate the Draydon lab in hell, and pull a Murasama and the encrypted schematic from the lab before heading home and crafting the oldest destroyer-destroying weapon in history, the Star Cannon. Now comes even more cheese, but don't worry, this won't be the last time I cheese the game. Using my limited funds, I mass purchase sun plate blocks from the architect, and then shimmer them into several thousand fallen stars. Each stack costs around 22 gold each, and after purchasing around 7 platinum total to gain over 4,000 stars for my cannon, and 12 stacks of stone that I'll never be able to use. That is the end of cheese, for now. You could also have crafted mana regeneration potions or magic power potions using the blood orbs from Blood Moon enemies, and the alchemy table that I acquired earlier. This would also allow you to do the exact same result, however for a little bit more grindy effort. The goblins then come past, and with some spawn rate helpers, they leave very quickly, and barrage arrows everywhere. Then I farm for cell phone parts to allow me to more easily find the rock scalper. I also free the goblin at the same time. After compressing all my accessories into new items and expanding my pylon network, and reforging my items for warding to gain the maximum defense possible, I found a handful more items to help with the destroyer before I dig straight down to find the rock scalper. See, a mod that I made adds an item to help locate the rock scalper, as well as other helpful things. And with my crappy looking metal detector, I have to admit I am not an artist, I dig straight onto the rock scalper. I then travel to the shimmer, and shimmer into souls, hellstone, and essences of havoc. All will be useful for my use, except for the 50 stone that I gained from it. Thankfully, Calamity changes mech boss summons so that they can be crafted on a pre-hard mode anvil, which allows me to craft the mechanical worm. I summon the destroyer of worlds, and then immediately get eaten by him. Yeah, I need more potions. Luckily, a blood moon occurred, allowing me to farm blood moon enemies for drops. Mainly the fished up enemies, for it also allows me to grab crocodile, which upon opening gives blood orbs, and also the fished blood moon enemies drop the most amount of bloody orbs compared to any other enemy at that stage of the game. Which, when combined with the alchemy table that I cheesed from the dungeon, allows me to craft nearly all the potions, except for a handful that Calamity decided to add extra ingredients to. So no anti-gravity injection for me. Then I summon the destroyer once again. Not with the adrenaline. but the aftermath is too great. Thou shalt die by my hand. And drop hallowed bars! Woo! We love hallowed bars! Boom! First boss down. The use of gravitation potions and the star cannon really helped speed up the fight and made this entirely possible. I had intentionally turned Calamity's early hard mode rework off, so I could gain hallowed bars from the destroyer, allowing me to upgrade my armor and weapons much earlier. Now, to note, this is entirely possible with the early hard mode rework enabled, as you just purchase a Contaminator from the steampunk who would have just moved in, as well as some astral solution from her. Then spray the astral solution onto some silt and slush to gain the astral variants of them, and then shove them into an extractinator, allowing you to get mithril and orichalcum as well as tier 1 hard mode ores. Without the rework, I also get tier 3 hard mode ores, but if the rework is enabled you only get tier 1 or tier 2. Then, after farming the destroyer some more to gain full hallowed armor and a superstar shooter, I summoned the Calamitas clone, using the mithril anvil I crafted, as well as essences of havoc that the Rochcalibur contained. Then, using the speed blaster, I died to the clone. Yeah, her brimstone blasts deal very big damage for my very squishy body. So, after another defeat, I decided to finally construct an arena. And, since I got a lucky early attempt with a Havoc's Breath, a flamethrower dropped from the Cataclysmic construct, it allowed me to fight the Calamitas clone to my fullest extent. And yeah, the Cal clone fell. I then farmed the destroyer some more, attempting to get a set of dev wings that rarely drop from the hard mode bosses, or what are usually hard mode bosses. It took 12 short kills, but Food Barbarian's tattered dragon wings were mine, which I then proceeded to lose after an accidental Alt F4. So back at it I was, farming the destroyer again. This time, it only took me 11 kills to get Zeph's wings. I then decided to take a break from the merciless killing, and constructed a small monument to the victories over my head, designed to hold all 11 relics from the bosses I aimed to kill. Luckily, I just so happened to gain 11 destroyer relics, and was able to use them as placeholders. And in the end, I really liked how it came out. It was very nice. After placing the Calamitas clone's relic in there, I took a deep breath, and then urged for more bloodshed. I murdered the local surface life for an unshield, using my mod to transfer Souls of Night into Souls of Light, at the cost of no longer being able to summon the destroyer. I tunneled through the underground to locate on drill, and barged into the ancient underground temple and murdered sentient boulders for their bricks, which I used to craft an ancient death whistle and summon the Ravager. I place his relic on my memory board. Then, much alike to Golem, I kill him several more times for his flashy geodes, containing several key items for this challenge, including the Ores for Life alloy, Cryonic Perennial and Storia bars, as well as the 3 cores that make the core of Calamity, and the Blood Pact, which is an accessory that increases my maximum life by 25% and increases the effectiveness of all healing potions by 25%. After a handful of Ravager kills, I enter the Abyss, aiming to mine some more Storia, allowing me to craft Hydrothermic Armor, the best and final armor set before I face the Moon Lord. Then, after slaying Ravager some more, I crafted a naughty present. Using it, I summoned the Frost Moon. Now, the Frost Moon and Pumpkin Moons aren't the best for their item, as the weapons at this stage in progression are heavily outclassed by Storia tier and Ravager drops. However, the Frost Moon allows for Festive Wind, a set of wings I completely glossed over in my previous video on the subject. Later on, the Frost Moon also provides access to Endothermic Energy, a requirement for the Codebreaker used to summon the Exomechs. The Pumpkin Moon, on the other hand, has its Nightmare Feel later on, and the Witch's Brew, the one good flying mount before the Exomechs, and the Necromantic Scroll. Not that I need the Necromantic Scroll itself, as of this second, but it was nice having it there. But for some reason, the Everstreams did not want to drop their damn wings. It took me 3 nights of max spawn raids to kill them, and finally one of them dropped their wings. Afterwards, I shimmered the present and turned it into a medallion, using pumpkin seeds I fished up from the stuffed fish many moons ago. I did not know at this point in time that you could shimmer cactus into pumpkin, so thank Chief Logan's community for pointing this out. Next, I dove into the Abyss once again to slay Idolists for their Idolist Tablet, an item used to summon the Lunatic Cultist, the next boss in our rampage. Now, you may be wondering why I didn't decide to kill the Eidolon earlier, and that was because the Eidolon only spawns after the Calamitas clone has been killed, or after the Wall of Flesh has been killed, either or. After quickly becoming a Burly and stocking up on what I thought were the best bullets I could get without some serious grinding, party bullets, I summoned the cultist once again. After his lifeless body fell to the floor, I placed my relic onto the tower after suffocating him with a pure amount of confetti I shot in his mouth. The pillars were boring as always, and after I took down my first, I crafted the Dead Sun's Wind, a flamethrower class weapon that shoots a beam that bounces off blocks and explodes on enemies' contact. After taking down some more pillars, I crafted the Stardust Dragon for slightly more damage, and some super healing potions before Moonlord spawned. And then the moon will kill me. Now I had to kill the cultist again. Since we never entered hard mode or killed Golem, the original sigil that Calamity modifies to summon him does not work. So after suffocating another cultist with pure confetti and pounding all the pillars into the ground, I have one more attempt at the Moonlord himself. and with the defeats of the Moon Lord, I bring myself into the post-Moon Lord pre-hard mode stage of the game. Wow, that's a mouthful. After farming the new meteors in the sky, I kit myself up in Luminite tier weaponry, farm a few more pillar fragments, and place down Moon Lord's Relic. Next, I farmed the Ravager some more, but I chose not to open his bags. This is so that when I beat Providence, I can obtain the upgraded version of Ravager loot from the pre-buffed Ravager, which makes gaining the post-Providence Ravager gear much easier to obtain. After I killed him 5 times, I go ahead and summon the Profane Guardians, and I died. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, what the heck? Well, after I crafted what was likely one of my favourite weapons in Calamity, the Elemental Blaster, I quickly defeat the Guardians and summon their master. After a handful of deaths and expanding my arena by some large margin, I decide to put off killing Providence to instead rip up the dungeon floor and make my own. This new and improved dungeon now sits at the bottom of the underworld, allowing the profaned enemies that spawn after Moonlord is killed to jump right into my perceived dungeon and die, releasing phantom spirits, as the game recognizes an enemy dying inside the dungeon with over 1000 health and attempts to spawn spirits. As a downside, dungeon guardians proceed to spawn in and rip my face off periodically every 5 seconds. However, this is the only method I can use to obtain necroplasm. As the method Chief Logan uses, yes, I draw a lot of lines between what I did and what he did, as he did something similar in his true Calamity low percent, link down below, of farming overloaded spirits for necroplasm, and that doesn't work, as said overloaded soldiers only spawn in hard mode, which we still haven't entered. Since no pre-hard mode enemy has the right conditions to summon a phantom spirit, or has an easy enough spawn condition, this is likely the best method. I mean, other than the fact that I constantly get my face ripped off from dungeon guardians. It is also a pretty decent method to summon Poltergeist, and to fight him, as the ghost plant doesn't enrage in hell, and with a long open platform it is very easy to just run away from him. After gathering 113 necroplasm, I head off home to craft an Eldritch Soul artifact, giving all around good side effect buffs to all classes. Then, after a failed Providence kill and another Moonlord slain, I summon the Providence once more. Finally. But this is not the end of Providence. I place her relic and her Guardian's relic on my display and open all the Ravager bags, as well as the Necromantic Geodes from the said bags, for many nice goodies. Then, after destroying yet another massive ecosystem for the Yuli Bloom ore, to craft myself a nice new set of armor, and after a little bit of preparation for the future, I prepare to fight Knight Providence. See, Knight Providence has the one thing Providence does not: wings. Summoning her in the underworld will only ever drop the Elysian Aegis, her shield. However, the set of wings between Moonlord and the end of the game are Yaren's wings. This can be overcome with an extremely challenging Knight Providence fight, as when summoned at night, she acts as though she's in both the Hallow and the Underworld at the same time. So now I just gotta kill Knight Providence. That was the most demoralizing 3 hours of my life. At least it only took 3 hours. Yay. Next I craft a cosmic worm and fight the Devourer of Gods, accidentally summoning him of course. I somehow managed to get him to his second phase and then to 45% health before I fall. Even after more attempts I am unable to beat what was my best. So I decide to take a giant bite out of the surface of my world, making a massive arena for the final 4 bosses of this run. Then, after making a super nice home for the nurse, and setting my spawn, I summon the Devourer of Gods. Now, this boss wasn't as painful as Providence was, but he sure had a few deaths before him. now comes likely the largest G's in this entire run. The mod that I made, the mod that helps me find the Excavator, also allows me to shimmer healing and mana potions. I also made it extend to the Calamity potions. Many people may consider this as cheating, as it is an intended game mechanic that these healing potions are not supposed to be shimmerable, and I've essentially overridden it. And as well as this, I do not include 33% chance for a shimmered potion ingredient to disappear, essentially duplicating all the items within it. However, at this point in the run, I did not know whether it would be possible to do it without the extremely beefed up gear that was locked behind the potions. However, after I did complete the run, I did go back and beat the next 3 bosses off camera without the gear from these potions. But now we have the question of why. Why did I need to shimmer the potions to obtain the Ascended Spirit Essences? Well, it's because of said Ascended Spirit Essences. The Essences themselves require Dark Sun Fragments to craft, which only drop from Solar Eclipse enemies. We cannot summon a Solar Eclipse due to us being in pre-hard mode, therefore locking us out of many armor, weapon, and accessory upgrades. The lack of Dark Sun Fragments also links itself to many upgrades and accessories, and since they're used to craft Ascended Spirit Essences are now no longer obtainable, which means even more weapons lockdown. And if you don't want to see me do this, go ahead. Don't shimmer the potions. I'm not the boss of you. I did it for myself, and then afterwards, I went back and proved to myself that I could do it. If you want to do this without the shimmer potions, I've left all the mods in the description down below, so you can completely replicate my run down to the last mod, just not shimmering the potions. And I'd be fine with that, because you are yourself. Anyway, after that quick little session, I craft many upgrades, such as Godslayer Armor, the Sponge, and the Asgardian Aegis, crafted with early hard mode potions being shimmered down to craft the Ornate Shield, Sumi, and many weapons such as the Essence Flayer, the Orderbringer, and the Stream Gouge, to name a few. Then I head to the jungle surface to farm Effulgent Feathers from Draconic Swarmers, since Dragon Folly is unavailable for us to kill based off the rules of a low percent. And then, after spending many a platinum on reforging, I summon Yaron. Just like that, Yaron is dead in only 9 bosses. I placed his relic on display and geared myself up, ready for the final 2 bosses of this run. Now, I had done this challenge before, however I was unable to defeat the Mechs or Supreme Calamitas, such is why I coded the Shimmerable healing potions. But this time, I knew I had to. I had scored through 3 hours of Providence suffering, it was going to end. After decimating the underground one final time for more than 2.5 thousand useless Auric ore. Yeah, it's useless. Your Auric ore is mainly for the endgame weapons, and there's only a handful of endgame weapons that I can actually craft. At this point, I also craft some Summoner and Mage sets, even though Mage is completely useless due to the lack of good mana potions and the lack of mana itself. And I start decrypting Draydon's schematics. In the meantime, I practice Supreme Calamitas. I get somewhere sometimes, but other times I wouldn't. But I continue trying. After a quick pit stop and an accidental slaying of the Eye of Cthulhu, the Alt F4 does wonders here, and it doesn't show up on the boss log, so technically I never defeated him. I summon the Mechs for the first time. And I die. At this point, I alternate between the Mechs and Supreme Calamitas to prevent myself from burning out of just continually fighting one of the bosses, until I get a pretty decent run while fighting the Mechs. Holy shit. Holy shit. Holy shit. No way. No way!
What?
First attempt of... Actually, Mechs have been defeated now. And all it took was a pivotal shift to Summoner, and they fell to bits and bobs. I slapped my relic onto that display, and after figuring out that Miracle Matter is useless, apart from one weapon that's post-Supreme Calamitas, I summon her with my new knowledge and new courage. Yeah, I'm gonna need some form of upgrade here. And luckily for me, there is one. Ares Exosuit. A summon weapon dropped from the Exomechs when Ares is defeated fast. However, Ares is probably the hardest Exomech for me to defeat last, since I'm using the Mirror of Kalahandra, which places several weapons orbiting above my head. They prioritize Ares because he's right there, and summons are lazy, and I have no real way of telling them who to prioritize. It's a real mess. So I grab my whip, yes, I've also made a crappy whip, and throw myself at the Exo-Mechs again. The reason I grabbed a whip is so I could target a specific enemy, but in the end I ended up switching to the actual staff of the mech worm to tell my summons to target mainly the twins, Artemis and Apollo, as they were the hardest to hit during the third phase. This is the phase when all the mechs are present and attacking the player. This time I managed to defeat Thanatos last. Just one more boss. Maybe he wants to just step away from Deltarune for a minute, you know? Fuck you, Ares. I'm gonna rip my hairs out.
Oh.
Thanatos was literally 0.1% away from entering his final phase, and Ares just stole it from him. I'm trying. Thankfully, after 3 progress field hours, which ended up being severely less painful than Providence's 3 hours, I killed Ares last, and with it, the Ares exoskeleton dropped. After getting back into the rhythm of Supreme Calamitas, I summoned her one final time. Black meat hole. And yes!
Away!
Second! Here, I semi-triumphantly place my relic on display and celebrate, being the second person in the world to pull off this feat and to have recorded it. Earlier in the video, I name-dropped Silverheart and Rover, as they were the main two who directly helped with the making of the wiki page, which inspired me to do this run. However, several members in both the English and Chinese communities in the Calamity scene also helped discovering things, such as how to extract the Natoronate Astral Silt for the Hardmode ores, and members in the Calamity Discord, such as Cog, Fluffy, Raish, Shulky, Flarithan, and Critical, who helped fact check an original strapped version of a script. But they still deserve to be credited here for their work towards the skipping off the wall of flesh. This challenge is fun. Should you do it? Well, with arguably the most arduous task of finding the right caliber now extremely simplified thanks to my mod, if you have several hours to spare and wish to expand your skills in the Calamity and Terraria in general, I think it's a great, fun experience. Ripping out all your hairs, finding your favorite weapons are inaccessible due to which bosses you don't defeat. Now, between the 3 months of recording and editing this video, Calamity has released a new update. The biggest effects on this run specifically are the fact that alcohol is now craftable, allowing for some extra damage and defense, and the fact that the Elemental Blaster was turned into the Super Radiant Slaughterer. It's a neat weapon, but it lacks the same use case as the Elemental Blaster, due to it now requiring the Buzzkill, a Hardmode weapon locked behind Skeletron Prime. Most are glad to see it go, I not so much. But you can't please everyone, so everyone's got to make compromises. Now, that's it. Long drought between videos, but life just got in the way, and there's just... yeah. I've been Guardian Games 67. If you've enjoyed the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.